that we are blessed with many hazards, from tropical cyclones, weather systems that will either bring heavy rains or floods and landslides, but also earthquake-related activities like tsunamis or even strong ground shaking, and in some other countries like Indonesia and the Philippines, volcanic eruptions. Of course, aside from this will be global warming and the consequent sea level rise. If we now look at the areas that are most at risk to these various hazards, because of the very high exposure to hazard, although our vulnerability is not that high, in terms of ranking all over the world, Southeast Asia is still very high from moderate to high risk compared to other countries. In particular, the Philippines, when compared to many other countries, rank third among the countries most exposed to hazards. This would be around 15. And number 4 there is Japan. If you look at the vulnerability, Japan and the Philippines are not part of it, but because of their very high exposure and still kind of high vulnerability, Philippines is still ranked number 3, while Japan is out of the picture. Let me just clarify that for me, there is no natural disaster. There are natural hazards and human-induced hazards, but all disasters are man-made. It's a debate whether you use the term natural disasters, which is the title of our seminar, but for me, there are disasters simply because of man's vulnerability or coping capacity. As you know, if there are no people, no community in the hazard zone, there will be no disaster. Why are we such a country blessed with many hazards? First of all, let me repeat the statistics often quoted. We're prone to many tropical cyclones. 20 would actually pass through the Philippine Area Responsibility. And the top left photo there is not a picture of a cut here. It's actually the typhoon track of the Philippines for many, many years. And you would actually see the Philippines except the southern end of the Philippines, which is Mindanao. Meaning, the southernmost end is not typically traversed by tropical cyclones, but other weather systems would also affect it. These tropical cyclones are sometimes accompanied by strong wind and may produce floods and landslides and storm surges. But other weather systems like monsoons, intertropical convergence zones would also bring heavy rains that might cause flash floods. This is a map of the country showing the landslide-prone areas, which are shown in yellow, and the flood-prone areas in the country, which are shown in red. So in essence, if you are not landslide-prone, your area is flood-prone. But there are sometimes areas in between, which is of that two steep slope, which are not flood-prone. But in essence, no area in the Philippines is hazard-free. Recent hydrometeorological disasters have occurred in the country and would remind us that large-scale disasters can happen because of strong winds or heavy rains. For example, February 17, 2006, a deep landslide event as deep as 80 meters went down the slope of Barangay Ginsaubot and traveled for 5 minutes and covered whole villages, killing 1,000 people. In 2009, tropical storm Quetzala or Ondoy dumped a lot of rain in Metro Manila and surrounding provinces and flooded the metropolis. And almost all those living in Metro Manila were somewhat affected by it. I flew in from Bangkok during the time or the height of the typhoon, and we encircled the international airport for 30 minutes. And when I landed and opened my cell phone, many people were asking help, including those who were supposed to do search and rescue. So the rescuers were asking for help as well. Because most often, those involved in disasters are focused on helping other people, but not thinking about their own safety and resilience. In 2011, tropical storm Solidum dumped a lot of rain in Cagayan de Oro City and Iligan in Mindanao, traversing many villages and destroying infrastructure. And lastly, in 2013, Super Typhoon Yolanda or Haiyan brought in more than 5-meter waves in many areas, very strong winds of more than 200 kilometers per hour, destroying buildings and houses, and flooding many low-lying coastal areas. More than 6,000 people died. In terms of geologic hazards, We have around 300 volcanoes, 24 of which are active, meaning these have erupted historically or in the last 10,000 years. And coupled with that, there will be around 20 earthquakes per day recorded by our seismic network. And in the past 400 years, 90 to 100 destructive earthquakes have occurred, and out of this, 40 tsunami events were generated. Because of this geologic hazards events, many people are now so aware of the damaging effects of these hazards. For example, shown here would be the recent damaging volcanic activities, starting with the 1911 eruption of the volcano in Batangas City, killing 1,300 people. These are the people who died in the island. The 91 Pinatubo eruption, which created thick deposits on the slopes and triggered debris flows or lahars for many, many years, and the threat is still not over. Other volcanoes have erupted quite severely as well, like Mayon volcano, who has killed close to 3,000 people during its eruption history. In terms of earthquake events, the Philippines also had suffered from very large earthquake events. In 1968, a magnitude 7.3 earthquake occurred 220 kilometers northeast of Manila. But although the shaking was not very strong, buildings then were disconstructed without no building code yet in 1968, and 268 people died in just one building in Manila. In 1976, a magnitude 7.9 earthquake triggered a tsunami as high as 9 meters in southwest Mindanao, and the shoreline closest to the epicenter was affected by a tsunami 9 meters high 2 to 5 minutes after an earthquake. Even if you have a good warning by that time, but even now, if that fast tsunami would occur, people would have to rely on natural observations for them to prepare for a possible tsunami attack. Close to 6,000 people died and many, many were injured. In 1990, magnitude 7.8 earthquake occurred in Luzon, killing 1,300 people. And recent events were not devastating because these were not in very urbanized areas. However, if these earthquakes would occur in urban settings, then we would see more damages and casualties. In terms of global warming, indeed we see the rise in temperature. In the past 70 years, we see the overall trend of increasing temperature of around 0.1 degrees centigrade per decade, both in the average, in the annual minimum temperature, and the annual maximum temperature. And this global warming in the Philippines can be related to intense rain, and in the next decades, or in the mid-21st century, the Weather Bureau forecasted the possible rainfall in the different areas of the country according to the seasons. In essence, there will be extreme rain in some months, but very dry land in other months. And overall, there will be drier parts of the country. So, given these natural hazards, we really need to prepare for all of this, but prepare better, but efficiently and in a timely manner. Taking off from my presentation this morning, I always emphasize 4 key activities for disaster resilience. First is to understand the hazard. By knowing the hazards, essentially, which areas will be affected by the hazard and how it will harm us. Second, can we monitor these hazards? Earthquakes cannot be predicted as of now, but for sure we can anticipate the potential magnitude of earthquake and how this would affect different areas in the country. Typhoons can be forecasted, and even floods and tsunamis can be forecasted given enough instrumentation, or we can use natural observation for these events. The third is being able to warn these events as fast as possible, or communicate the risk, the potential impacts of these different hazards to various communities. So this first 3 is really understanding the risk. The fourth and most important, and that is to be done by the local level, national level, and the communities, is the response which is appropriate and timely at various levels. And these we can include both preparedness, prevention, mitigation, response, and recovery. We use the language of disaster risk reduction and management, or climate change mitigation and adaptation. So let me focus on hazards and risk assessment for the country. We all know that Albert Einstein said that imagination is actually more important than knowledge. Knowledge is not that important unless imagination is done. We would not be able to progress if we don't have imagination. So in essence, for me, disaster risk reduction or preparedness, or preparing how to respond and recover, is full of imagination. And I use the boxing match, which is an analog for me for a potential disaster. You know, our famous boxer is Senator Rene Pacquiao, who has been 8 Division I class champions. And of course, he would not fight a person unless he has studied the person, his strengths and weaknesses. He would just not box. So if his opponent is tall and heavy, then his training would be very good and his plan would be very good. Meaning, if we are preparing for a large-scale disaster, and if we consider that disaster as a heavyweight disaster, then our preparedness must also be heavyweight or super heavyweight. We should not be preparing for a heavyweight match and our preparedness is just lightweight. So how do we go about disaster imagination? And the common questions that we always ask is, before the event, what are the hazards associated with a natural event? Which areas will be affected by the hazards? What will be the severity? What will be the possible impacts of a particular hazard to various localities? How many buildings will be damaged or affected? How many people will be displaced, be injured or die? Are there critical facilities that will be damaged? Will we have a hospital? Will we have a cell phone or power? So many questions to ask. And all of these can actually be imagined through science, technology, and innovation. Disaster imagination for me is simply a step-by-step procedure where you actually do the following. We do hazards identification. If you're a community, you might focus only on your community, but it is not good. You have to focus on surrounding communities because your supply of food and other resources might come from other areas. You need to also do hazards assessment for a given scale of the hazard, what will be the effect to your areas and surrounding. If you're the governor of the province, then you have to really have a bird's eye view of what can happen. Hazards assessment is good for preparing to save lives, but unless we do more detailed risk assessment, like loss, casualty, or social, physical, economic damage assessment, then we cannot really propose appropriate mitigation measures and prioritize this. So we need to do this. Even if we prepare, even if we mitigate, there will be residual risks or impacts if the event would happen. There are things that we cannot do. So you have to analyze the most likely impact or damage to critical facilities in your community. And that is the important data so that we can prepare how to respond to the risk, not the remaining risk, and we can prepare how to recover out of this. So everything is a step-by-step process, and we can plan ahead before anything would happen. There are various organizations in the Philippines that are involved in natural hazards and risk assessment. The first is the Department of Science and Technology and the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, which would have different mandated organizations under its wings, focused on specific hazards. PHOS for geological hazards, PATASA for hydrocarbon hazards, LGD for flood and landslide, and RIE to consolidate the information. The Department of Science and Technology, however, would provide funding for various academic organizations like the mapping through LiDAR of all the flat areas of the Philippines, the Project NOAA, which is the web GIS and the rain-triggered landslide and storm surge maps. These projects are finished by 2015, but if the project leader has proposed additional project, then they get funded. For example, the Dream LiDAR project is continuing through the application of LiDAR techniques in flood hazards assessment, exposure database collection, through the different state universities and colleges and private organizations. In fact, in Mindanao, there is a program called GeoSafer Mindanao. For 2 years, they're funded, and this is a combined public and private institutions at the higher level, preparing exposure database and flood assessment of the different places in Mindanao. For the Mines and Geoscience Bureau, they have finished 1:50,000 to 1:10,000 scale mapping for landslides and floods. So these are available from the website, but we plan to take up all of this information in the platform for the GeoRisk Philippines. For FIVOX, we have finished the preparation of volcanic hazard maps, which are very relevant to areas which have active volcanoes. And of course, with new methodology and data being obtained, we update these different maps. We have also prepared national to local scale earthquake-related hazard maps. Of course, part of our building permit process is not to allow people to build directly on top of active faults. So one of the priorities that we do at FIVOX USD is to map where the faults are. So although in government we have many fault-finding organizations like Commission on Audit, Philippine National Police, National Bureau of Investigation, the only certified fault-finding organization is FIVOX or USD, not MGB. We have finished all the tsunami mapping for all coastal hazards, and we are going into more detailed mapping and risk assessment of all of these, especially urban areas. For example, aside from Metro Manila, we're also studying Cebu. We have found out that there are many active faults in Cebu, and by doing paleoseismology, we're able to find out how often this would move. We're also doing this in Davao City and many other cities in the Philippines. We also teamed up with many government organizations in producing a multi-hazard mapping of different provinces, around 30 provinces of the Philippines. And aside from the hazard map, we have organized these different groups to develop community-based warning systems for flood, tsunami, and landslide. So this is an example of the map for Cavite. For risk assessment, we are doing volcanic risk assessment methodology, but we're advanced in terms of earthquake and related hazards. We have looked at Metro Manila and how this will be affected by a large earthquake, and we're moving into Cebu. We know the potential casualty for Cebu, and also into Davao. We're finishing up these two studies. In Metro Manila, for example, it is one of the most popular disaster preparedness scenario that even the president of the country has really taken particular attention to this down to the local people. And this is the possible impact of the earthquake in Metro Manila alone. Around 31,000 deaths might occur in the evening, if the earthquake is in the evening, because of building collapses. And around 2.3 million pesos will be damaged. If it's a magnitude 6.5 only, it's 23,000, still a lot. A magnitude 6.5 earthquake in Surigao del Norte only caused 8 casualties. But in Manila, because of the density of population and buildings, this can cause a lot. This big one scenario is very popular because it enabled everyone to be able to imagine the consequence, not only the hazard that will occur, but the consequence, so that this is the formula for convincing people to really get involved. Have these people from the public down up to the president to imagine not only the hazard but the consequence. Hence the term disaster imagination. And there's a tool to do this. We have developed the Rapid Earthquake Damage Assessment System, initially built for earthquake. There's 3 main modules. First is the hazard assessment module. It can simulate the possible impact of an earthquake given the magnitude, depth, and location, and how the fault moves. But it can also incorporate all the possible hazard maps from different organizations. The second module is the exposure database module. We have typologies of buildings that can be used for your purposes and vetted by our civil engineers and appropriate to risk assessment for earthquake, flood, and strong wind. So unless we have have this, then the details of the risk assessment at the village level will not be able to done. But for now, we can use the Philippine Statistics Authority's data to estimate the possible impacts. Obviously, if we combine hazard assessment and exposure, we can do the impact assessment module. And the impact assessment is essentially controlled by hazards, by the exposure, and by the vulnerability. And the vulnerability can be physical, can be social. We have fragility curves and vulnerability functions to estimate the physical damage and the economic cost of replacing these different buildings. So, right now, we have impact assessment module for earthquake, for flood loss, and for strong wind. And we're finishing up the impact assessment module for flood and severe wind for agriculture purposes. We also developed hazards and risk information portals through the web or phone application. One notable feature is the fault finder, the FIVOX fault finder. This has been inspired by the fact that Filipinos want to know where the faults are, not because we're a fault finder nation. But essentially, just click the screen of your cell phone and it will tell you the distance to the nearest active fault, which makes real estate transparent, which makes building permit process transparent, and land use planning transparent. We also have developed geoportals under DNR and RIA, and also for FIVOX, and for DOST-funded projects. The next step that we are doing, and I explained this earlier before, is to develop the Georisk Philippines platform. This envisions, this platform is supposed to be the country's source of information for accurate and efficient hazards and risk assessment to increase the nation's resilience to natural hazards. It has several objectives. One, formulate standards for input of information. We have so many maps, but we don't have standard codes for different maps. If you have standard codes, it's easy to integrate. Second, engage mandated organizations to be involved in this advocacy, to use standard codes to harmonize information for input in the risk database. We will create platforms, interfaces, and applications to enable easy access into the database, enabling government and other stakeholders, including the private sector and the public, to perform hazards and risk assessment. And of course, to manage and secure the database to make it sustainable. The strategic Georisk Philippines technology roadmap would involve in the provision of effective hazards and risk assessment, development of user-friendly platforms, and other products, visualization tools, and land use planning tools. Essentially, what we want to do is for the different mandated organizations to maintain their own databases, but this will be linked to a main server to be housed at the office at FIVOX, and for the stakeholders to be able to get the information. Some of the things that we have done so far is to assess all the schools of the Department of Education. Around 45,000, close to 46,000 schools. Public schools are scattered all over the country, and we have evaluated the specific hazards that each school would be affected with in different regions, provinces, and towns of the country. And we have done this for hospitals and even for anything that would be in the map form. For the Department of Public Works, for example, they wanted to find out how many kilometers of roads are traversed or traversing liquefaction-prone areas. Because when there's an earthquake event, these roads would need to be fixed. So for planning purposes, they can actually do that and even plan ahead to how to budget this fixing of roads in case there's a large earthquake. This can be done nationally. For Metro Cebu, we can also do that, and this can be done at all levels. There are many applications. For monitoring and warning of these hazards, the Philippine Atmospheric, Geophysical, and Astronomical Services Administration is a mandated organization, and we have 24-hour weather monitoring and observation system. We analyze this and we provide this to different organizations and the public. One of the major activities of the Weather Bureau is to cover all areas of the country under Doppler radar. So the Doppler radar can provide you with the actual rainfall over the area even if you don't have a rain gauge. So you don't need to have a rain gauge all over. And this data can be viewed in the PAGASA website. PAGASA is also developing flood forecasting and warning centers for all 18 major river basins. And this would have appropriate people that would warn the communities under the river basin. Now, for those of you who were asking what happened to Project NOAA is a project, every project has a start and an end. So it has ended in 2015. But the data can be seen still at UP NOAA, but actually all the data are DOST's data. So you can actually download the data from this visualization tool, fieldSensors.asti.gov.ph, or go to the new website of PAGASA. Very easy to remember. The new website of PAGASA is dagom.pagasa.dost.gov.ph. Okay. For volcano monitoring, we're now monitoring 10 volcanoes all over the country. We have an integrated near real-time volcano monitoring, where sensors are placed on the slopes of the volcano. We can detect the shaking, the tilt, and other data. And these are sent directly via radio to an observatory, and the observatory data are simultaneously sent to the main office in Quezon City by satellite. Some of the volcanoes are monitored directly from the main office. So, unlike years ago where I have to go around each volcano that is misbehaving, then I can just stay in the office and monitor all the volcanoes in one group. For earthquake and tsunami monitoring, we now have a 100-station network, which covers the whole country, 10 of which is the strong motion broadband sensor, which can record magnitude 9 or greater earthquake events. This earthquake monitoring is essentially a tool for us to say if there's a possible tsunami or not based on earthquake data. We also have close to 30 sea level monitoring stations in the Philippines, meaning we operated by FIVOS. But NAPRIA also has its own 40 stations. We have biosatellite or SMS communication system for all our monitoring of sea level all over the country. One very important thing is we always try to mix science, technology, and innovation with community preparedness. So we have developed a community tsunami early warning system for 10 sites of the Philippines. The idea is, if the shoreline is very straight, then the arrival of the tsunami will be very fast. But if there is a bay or an inlet, then the inner part of the bay will still have enough time for possible warning. So to do this community-based warning, we have several components. One is, of course, earthquake monitoring. The second is we place sea level stations at the mouth of bays so that when there's a possible earthquake, we have to know if there will be either a seawater retreat or increase, and that would mean either a tsunami is starting or already coming. The third component is to do pilot sirens in selected villages. And these are sounded either one by the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology or the local government that can also monitor the sea level data after the earthquake. We can sound the different sirens altogether. But more importantly, people are trained how to evacuate, where to evacuate,